to spend with us this morning. Um, Hopefully you can see the slides and the chat function is open as well, so that to the extent you have any questions during the session, you can post them to the chat board. I will try to pay attention to it. My lovely assistant, Sharon Vanna White, Sharon Thompson, is helping me this morning, and she will also be watching the chat board. So if I miss anything in terms of questions, I ultimately really want to create an opportunity for you all to use me to support you in improving your self-care. So I don't want to do all the talking this morning, but I want to be open for some questions. All right, well, let's get started. If you're in a position to hopefully be sitting down and you're comfortable, let's do a stress relieving exercise. Let's start off with some care. I don't know about you, but it's been a bit of a hectic week. I know I'm not the only one. It's been a busy week and so sometimes Saturday morning is the first chance you get to really just sit down and actually enjoy a minute with yourself. So let's do some deep breathing. Let's practice some deep breathing. So what we're going to do, if you're sitting, make sure your posture is straight. Your legs are firmly on the floor. You can actually feel your calf muscles, and you can feel your thigh muscles by pushing onto the floor. Wiggle your toes. Make sure you can feel your toes. Relax your arms and your hands and your shoulders in your lap or in the arms of the chair. Let's close our eyes. I'm going to talk you through some deep breathing. And when we breathe in, make sure that your stomach expands. Don't just breathe into your chest, but make sure your stomach expands. We're going to breathe in. When we breathe out, we're going to do a mental count of 8. We want to breathe out a little longer than we breathe in. And try to clear your mind as we're working through this exercise so that it really relaxes you. All right, let's begin. Let's take a deep breath in through your nose. Stomach out. All right, let it go through your mouth. Mental count to 8. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. All right, repeat. Deep breath in. All right, out. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Let's repeat. Deep breath in. Make sure your stomach is expanding. Out. 4, 6, 7, 8. Last time in. Hold it. All right, let's breathe out through our mouths. 3, 5, 7, and 8. All right. Wiggle your toes. Wiggle your fingers. Shake your legs. Make sure you're in touch with your whole body. All right, we did some deep breathing. So that's a technique that you can practice anytime. Key word is practicing it. It is a stress reliever. If you find yourself in the midst of a stressful situation, see if you can steal away and just do some deep breathing. It takes as long as 4 breaths. You got to breathe anyway. So you might as well enjoy the benefit of some deep breathing. Now, what I hope to accomplish today through this seminar, let me just move the chat board so that it's not right in my way. Give me just a second. I'm still getting used to some of this technology. So what I hope to accomplish this morning is I'm not going to try to be anybody's therapist this morning, even though I am a licensed clinical professional counselor in the state of Maryland. This morning, I'm going to provide you with some information that hopefully will stimulate you to focus a little bit more on your self-care and get you to pay a little more attention to yourself. Feel free to ask me questions throughout. Either you can post them to the chat board or you can, I think there's a raise your hand feature in here too. So feel free to use that as well, and I will try to make sure that I get to your questions. There we go. I just got the chat board back open. So, all right, guys, let's get started. Hopefully you can see the slides, and as everyone knows, the reason for me doing this seminar, as I said, I'm used to doing, I usually offer several seminars throughout the year in an effort to support people in various areas of their life. Usually I do a lot of relationship seminars. That's an area that I get a lot of requests for. I do try to squeeze in some mental health seminars. And of course, because of the things that happened in 2020, I didn't get to do any live seminars. So I didn't want 2021 to come and go, and I'm still behind on offering any seminars. So here we are in the Zoom platform, and we're starting off the year with self-care in challenging times. You all know that what's happened in 2020 because of the coronavirus, social unrest, and all the things going on, we've all been exposed to increased stress. One of the things that I am seeing in my private practice is a number of people coming in who have never been in to see a mental health professional in their lives, but the pressures of the social distancing, the possibilities of job loss, the social unrest, all the various factors, the economic impact of this virus, in addition to the unfortunate fact that over 500,000 people have lost their lives. People are just under all kinds of stress. And what we're seeing in mental health profession is that people are coming in and they are reporting, of course, all kinds of increased levels of stress and unhealthy coping behaviors. And we're going to talk about those today. But again, today I want to hopefully be able to just encourage you and admonish you and inspire you to take better care of yourselves. One of the consequences from a mental health perspective of the coronavirus is that many of us thought we had pretty good self-care regimens in place. We prided ourselves on taking pretty good care of ourselves. And because so many things have been stripped away because of the coronavirus, what people are finding is that what they used to think were adequate and enjoyable self-care activities, what they really found out is that they were just busy, active people who could afford a fairly enjoyable lifestyle. They had a lot of features for socializing and entertainment. And once all that was stripped away, then the pressure started to fold in on them and things began to collapse. And many find that they don't actually have the infrastructure of self-care that they thought they had. And so one of the things I've been spending time doing in my working with clients is helping them to actually enhance and build a true self-care infrastructure. Today, I'm going to introduce to you the comprehensive self-care model. It's not rocket science. It's like dieting. It makes sense as you read the diet. The most difficult part of a diet is putting it in place and staying consistent with it. And so self-care is similar to that. It's really not rocket science. It is a powerful tool to offer yourself, but it must be offered in some consistency and organization. So that's what I hope to help you with today. If you can see the slides, I don't have a lot. I'll just go through a few of them. Now, many people have been experiencing a lot of stress, and of course, stress is just about impossible to get away from. Everybody experience it. It's pretty difficult to build a lifestyle where you don't experience any stress. Stress is basically our psychological perception of a threat or pressure that causes us to be conscious of the fact that we are either unsafe or that something is going to be disturbed in our normal course of living. Our body reacts to the stress, and it is the ongoing pressure of stress that can be dangerous for many of us. Chronic stress is often difficult to spot because it can be underneath the surface, and people can normalize stress as a part of their life and just say, oh, that's just, I live a stressful life, and they normalize it. But here's the challenge, and I just want to say this. You can read the slides. I don't want to read slides to you. I really want to talk to you. One of the things that it's important to understand about stress is that it is a silent killer. As many of us know, you will never see a death certificate that says that anyone died because of stress. What you'll see on a death certificate is a cause of death related to the failure of a vital organ: kidney failure, heart disease, heart attack, pancreatic cancer, various other diseases that attack our vital organs. But ultimately, many of these things are the result of sustained stress and chronic stress in our bodies. Stress deteriorates physical tissue. The actual physiological process of being stressed, meaning that there's high amounts of cortisol in our bodies, in our bloodstreams. We need it when we need it, but we cannot stay in that state for very long because it wears and tears on our vital organs, and over the years makes them susceptible to other diseases. And so, as I said, you'll never see a death certificate that says anybody died from stress. But ultimately, stress is killing people, and stress can kill you. And so we have to be aware, and it's important that we do what we can to manage stress. Stress can disturb your sleep schedule. It is contributed to by, of course, environments at work and in your neighborhood, in your home, the lack of close relationships with friends and families. Being a person that many people like to say these days, I'm an introvert, and that's fine if you're an introvert, but even introverts need some people interaction. Isolation is not healthy for anybody, and isolation can be a sign of stress. And as I said, stress is harmful to you psychologically. It leads to illnesses such as heart disease, diabetes, cancer, and it can even change the functioning of your brain to the point where it can begin to shorten cognitive capacities. Your memory gets impaired. You start to not to be as quick on your feet as you used to be. Now, I know you say some of that's from age anyway, but prolonged sustaining of stress in your body will begin to affect you. You got to think a few minutes, and you'll have those moments where you walk into a room and forget why you walked into the room. That's a sign of stress. I know some of you out there that are over the age of 50 are saying, no, that's just old age. That's a part of it, but we don't want to make old age and aging process have more impact on us. Stress will cause you to forget. It impacts your short-term memory. You'll have to think about what 2 and 2 equals for more than half a second. All of those are impacts of stress. And so more studies will be coming out, and you'll be hearing more about various diseases dementia and Alzheimer's disease that are products and contributed to because of stress. So it has a significant impact on us, and we are under stressful times. And so that's why I thought it'd be good to talk about this to see if we can help some folks to manage some of this stress. Now, some people are, as I said, have normalized stress in their life to the point where they have developed unhealthy coping habits, and these unhealthy coping habits have been absorbed into their lifestyle. You can see on the slide, some of them smoking, drinking, and using drugs, overeating, as you've heard many people talk about the COVID-19 or the 19 pounds that they put on since COVID. Some of that is because you can't have the same level of activity. You've been shut up in your homes and having to find other alternatives. You're not getting as much physical exercise. And of course, we're eating differently. We're stuck in the house trying to eat as healthy as we can, but every once in a while you order a bag of chips, or there's extra cookies and snacks in the house. You've been eating a lot of carry out, steak and cheese from around the corner, wings and mumbo sauce and French fries and all of that stuff that, it's fun to eat, but you can't make that a part of your regular diet. But when you're stressed out, you will eat differently. Your body will crave carbs and sugars and salts as a means of self-soothing. And so many of us have put on weight just due to COVID, due to the increased stress. And so that is an unhealthy part of stress. And if you let it, you will change your diet permanently, and it will be unhealthy permanently. And of course, you'll reap the consequences of that. And, you can't get away with just saying, I'm a big bodied person, this is my genetics. Yeah, that may be true, but you still have a responsibility to watch how you eat. If you find yourself daydreaming a lot and zoning out, that's unhealthy. That doesn't help your functioning at work and in other things you need to maintain focus on. Withdrawing from family and friends, becoming even more isolated, staying alone. Many people who already live single lives or live by themselves are really being impacted even more so by the social distancing, because what social activities they did involve, they usually had to go out for, and now they've been limited to just social media activities. And I mean, it worked for the first couple of months of COVID, but as the months went on, people began to experience more loneliness as a part of the isolation, and they began to become even more withdrawn. Some of the people that I even see in my private practice, by the time they get to me, they haven't had any contact with people for several weeks because they've just withdrawn. Some of them have called out sick to work. Some of them are being sent to see mental health professionals by their jobs because they're despondent, and isolation has been noticed by coworkers. And so you're sleeping too much, or you're not sleeping enough. You're waking up all times of the night. You start taking out your stress on other people, and that just becomes something that you're routinely doing. And so all of these things and others can be unhealthy copings with stress. Interesting fact that I heard recently was that in the state of Virginia, during the first several months of the COVID social distancing and isolation guidelines, that alcohol sales in the state of Virginia were projected to take a big hit because they had lost out on all the restaurant and hotel sales that they would normally have. And instead, what happened in the state of Maryland, instead of taking a big hit in the sales tax and generated from the sales of alcohol, during the first few months of COVID, they experienced higher sales of alcohol, even with the absence of the hotels and restaurants. single purchasing, individual purchasing of alcohol sales. And the number I remember hearing was somewhere in the range of 30 to 40% increase over normal sales amounts. And what this tells us is that folks were doing a lot of drinking during COVID. And so if you're drinking a lot more, then you are most likely utilizing an unhealthy method for coping with the stress of being cut off from the normal routines and activities of your life. And I get it, you know, a little wine for thy stomach's sake is good, but you know, you got to watch that drinking. And as I said, the alcohol sales skyrocketed in the state of Virginia. I don't know the statistics for other states. I didn't get a chance to look it up. But if alcohol sales are on the increase, that means a lot of folks are drinking, and they're going to come out of COVID being alcohol abusers. The substance abuse facilities are going to see an increase in patient numbers because folks are going to come out of this with alcohol problems, drug problems, because they've been over medicating with alcohol and drugs. And I don't know if that affects anybody in your family. I know one day I drove down the street. I was driving down the street and it was recycling day. And I just happened to notice that in most of the recycling bins were overflowing and a lot of beer cans in those recycling bins. Now, I'm not that nosy neighbor that just goes around checking people. I just happened to notice, boy, it's a lot of overflowing recycling bins. And I happened to notice what many of them were overflowing with is not just the beer cans, but the beer boxes. So folks have been doing a lot of drinking. And while you may think, well, you know, I don't drink, that's not a problem for me. Well, it is because those folks are out on the road too. And so as we know, drinking and driving is a problem, but drinking, especially utilizing it as a self-medication, it can be absorbed into your way of life. So let me give you the 4 A's of healthy stress management. So 1 is to avoid stress, 2 is to alter the stressor, 3 is to adapt to the stressor, and 4 is to accept the stressor. Now, avoid the stressor basically means to take control of your surroundings. You can avoid situations and people that you know are stressful for you where you can. Now, I get it. No one is exempt from stress, but where there are stressors in your life that you can actually avoid, take advantage of being able to avoid it if there is no severe consequences to be suffered. Avoid people that just get on your nerves and bother you. People that you don't have to be involved with. Limit your interactions with people that are stressors for you just because of the way they act around you. They're boundary testers. And when you're around them, they just do things that annoy you and irritate you and stress you. If you could avoid those people, avoid them. Now, no, I hear you out there. I know some of you saying, but I live with some of those people. and that's a challenge. And so we'll have to talk about ways to deal with that. Some of you work with folks that just get under your skin. Where you can avoid those interactions, avoid them. Learn to say no is another technique of avoiding stress. Sometimes we say yes to too many things. We overwhelm ourselves. We overtask ourselves. We stretch ourselves out. So just learn to say no. And if you can't say no, learn how to nuance a no in your language. Learn how to say not at this moment, not right now. I'll have to get back to you on that. Let me think about that. Do whatever. If you're not comfortable saying no, find some language and practice saying it so that you have a chance to limit taking on more than you have to. Change your list of things to do. Look at your calendar routinely. You should have a calendar. If you don't have a calendar, then you're predisposed to being overtasked. But if you have a calendar, step back and look at it before the week begins. On Sunday evening, maybe take a look at your calendar and make sure that you're not overburdened and you haven't put too much on it. If there are particular events that you can't avoid on the calendar that are stressful for you, then Make sure that where you can avoid some stress, you avoid the stresses around that. Change the schedule is basically what I'm saying. That's a part of avoiding stress. And then there's altering the stressor. And that's where if there are people that, as I said, that are involved in your life and you can't get away from them, you can't avoid them, then practice language that reinforces your boundaries. Learn how to say to people that what they're doing is a problem for you. You don't have to use my language, but find language that works for you to let people know that the way that they treat you or talk to you or interact with you is not comfortable for you. Learn how to communicate your feelings in a safe environment. Don't just stuff your feelings. I met with somebody recently and they had spent 20 years of stuffing feelings. And they blew up at one point at somebody who didn't deserve it, but that person got all at least 5 or 6 years of their stuffing of feelings in one incident. And so it comes from just not having an opportunity to healthily process your feelings, to talk them out sometimes. In the comprehensive self-care model, that's a part of it, is spending time with yourself and finding healthy options to express your feelings. Another thing that you can do with stress is adapt to the stressor. Now, when you adapt to the stressor, that means some things that you may have to do intellectually and mentally. Adapting means changing your expectations, adjusting your standards for how things have to work. I know that there's at least one person that's in this seminar this morning, and I'm not going to ask you to raise your hand or anything, but I guarantee you that out of all the people in this seminar, there's somebody that's a perfectionist. And I'm not going to say who they are, but there's some of us that struggle with perfection, and perfection is a relentless stressor. And so that's something that you have to work with on your own. You have to adapt your expectations. You have to relax the need for expectation. I like to say that expectation is a ride that never stops. Perfection is a ride that never has any stop. It just keeps going around and around. It's like being on the subway and missing your stop because it's not the perfect stop. So perfection does not have a get-off point. It's better to strive for excellence than to strive for perfection. Excellence is achievable, sustainable, and reasonable, but perfection is none of those. And so relax your perfection, change your expectations for situations, reframe things. Some of us have a tendency to look at things from a negative perspective, but it's important to learn how to reframe things from a more positive perspective. I'm not saying be in denial about things, but pay attention to how you look at things. Sometimes the glass is not half full, and you can talk about it from a half full perspective. So I see somebody has their hand up. Who is that? I can't tell who it is. Whoever you are, feel free to speak up if you have a question. Okay, I saw a hand. All right, maybe it was just a glitch. All right, so learn how to change your expectations. Hopefully you can do some. Let me see, they're on the chat line now. Let me see if I can pick it up on the chat line. Okay. Oh, okay, I got it. I'm following now. I'm still learning this technology. They're telling me that that they're agreeing with what I'm saying. So thank you for that. That was a hand clap. I thought it was a hand raise. So the other part of this is to adapt to the stresses. Now, practice your deep breathing. That's a part of adapting to a stressor. When you're in that stressful situation, that's why we started off with the deep breathing. So you got a chance to practice it. Learn how to practice it so you can use deep breathing even when you're in stressful situations that you couldn't avoid or alter. That's part of adapting to the stressor. So practice deep breathing, take an inventory of the situation, also learn how to, or if necessary, reach out to somebody that you can vent with, that you can process with as it relates to the stressor. All of these are things that you can do where you can't avoid or alter the stressor. And then finally, there is accept the stressor. So the final 4 A's of healthy stress management are accept the stressor. That means to, again, reach out, talk to people, use your social support system to let people know what's going on with you, be open to feedback on different ways to approach things. Make sure you have that social support system. Here's another one. Learn to forgive. Learn to forgive. Sometimes we can't forgive others, and of course, we can't forgive ourselves. And so we're so hard on ourselves. And if we could just learn to be more compassionate and forgiving towards ourselves. Yes, we've made mistakes. We can't change the past, but you can certainly reframe how you see it in the present and going towards the future. Learning to reframe, learning to recognize that the things of the past, yes, you have made mistakes. And I emphasize that word. Try to incorporate that word into your thinking, that you've made mistakes. Yes, some mistakes you could have avoided. Some mistakes you should have known better than to make. Some mistakes you will struggle with the consequences of, but just give yourself the at least a relaxed language versus saying failure. Too many people use the language of failure. And if you use that language long enough, you start to ingest it, metabolize it emotionally, and your self-image becomes one of a failure. And that is antithetical to being a stress manager. You have to accept that you're human. You're going to make mistakes. You do the best that you can do. And sometimes doing the best that you can do is excellent. That is excellent. And so changing your standards, learning how to practice positive self-talk, talking you through yourself, talking through some things with yourself. In some of the tools I use with people when I practice with them in my private practice, there are people that have routine negative self-talk. And so one of the things we work with them on is how to neutralize their internal negative critic. All of us have an internal critic, and oftentimes the internal critic is very negative. And so we learn how to talk back to our negative critic as a means of pushing back against stress. Practice envisioning techniques. If you've ever had a pleasant moment in your life and you have memories of it, learn to sit in those memories. Take 5 minutes and sit in those memories and just enjoy the fact that you had that pleasurable time when you were in some place. Maybe it was near water, or maybe it was a memory from your past in a family situation. I'll be transparent. I have 2 that work really well for me. One is once I was in Cancun, and there was this moment I had on the beach. My wife and I were on a private beach on a resort, and there weren't very many people on the beach. And it was this moment that I had where all the stress, I felt it just seep out of my body, and it just faded away into the sand. I was looking at the sun off the coast of the beach, and the waters were just crystal clear, kind of that aqua color. And it met this deep blue sky, and there were clouds, just puffy white clouds in the sky. And there was a cool breeze blowing, and I could smell the cocoa butter from the sun tanning lotion. And I had that moment. And I take that moment with me as often as I can, and I bathe myself in it because it calms me. It reminds me that life is not all stress. Do some envisioning. All of you have that memory. Sometimes when I smell fried chicken reminds me of my grandmother, back with my grandmother and her little house in DC, and she would fry up some chicken. And some of my best memories were at family dinners and my grandmother frying up some chicken and fixing some potato salad and all that other stuff. Not that I want to eat that stuff every day, but I will admit I do enjoy some fried chicken every once in a while. But every once in a while, I'll go in the Giant and they're frying the chicken, and I'll have a pleasant moment just smelling the fried chicken through the aromatherapy. So that's one of the means of stress management is using aromatherapy. So use envisioning, get that memory, sit down this weekend and recall some of your pivotal positive memories and moments, things where you really enjoyed the vacation and reminisce about it. Enjoy it again. Nobody can steal your moments away from you. You may not be able to jump on a plane or jump in a car and get back to that situation, but you have a memory and you can regurgitate that memory and re-enjoy that moment in a current moment, and even have the visceral experience. When I smell fried chicken, my body responds and I get hungry. So that's how powerful envisioning can be in aromatherapy. So give those things some try. I'm rushing through because I want to stay on time and leave some time for you all to ask me questions. Let me move on quickly. Now, in terms of anxiety and depression, I'm going to just run through this real quick because I want to get to a point where you're allowed to ask me questions, have some time to ask me questions. Depression and anxiety. Now, one, stress, overexposure to stress can lead to anxiety symptoms. Now, stress symptoms and anxiety symptoms kind of run they're co-conspirators with each other. Where the difference comes in is in the time period. There is a level of intensity, frequency, and duration of stress, the stress factors, that once they stay around too long and they're too intense, they basically have evolved into anxiety. Anxiety is defined as excessive worry about events, high intensity, frequency, and duration of worry that's out of proportion to the likelihood of the event. You begin to experience restlessness, feeling on edge, being hypervigilant, easily fatigued, difficulty concentrating and maintaining focus. You're not able to stay on track. Your work performance, of course, is impaired, or your school performance is impaired because you can't stay focused. You can't stay on track. You may think you have ADD, but sometimes it's mild anxiety that you're experiencing. You get irritable. You're frequently moody. You're having mood swings, and I know there are other factors, especially for the women that in my private practice will come on and tell me, Ms. Thompson, this is it's that week. So I've been moody this week. So don't put that in the notes that I had mood decline because it was because of my cycle. And I understand that, but you need to pay attention to whether this is more than your normal period of moodiness. People experience muscle tension, of course, sleep disturbance. These are just some of the symptoms of anxiety. Because you have these symptoms does not mean you can be diagnosed with anxiety. There are other criteria that are necessary in order for you to actually be diagnosed with an anxiety disorder. But everybody experiences anxiety symptoms and even cues. Cues are the things that you experience in your body tensions. Some of the anxiety clients that I work with that have really done their work, they are well-trained in managing their anxiety to the point where they know when their body, how their body is telegraphing that they're moving towards an anxiety episode. Some of my clients can say, I get a twitch in my leg, or I get some irritation in the back of my neck. I get a pain in my temple. I get a slight headache in the back of my forehead. These are all what we call anxiety cues that people experience. And those cues tell you that you're moving towards full-blown anxiety symptoms. And so managing anxiety is about learning what your cues are as well. That's a whole nother seminar. You may actually need to go see a mental health professional to get more information and more tools related to that. But these are the general anxiety symptoms that you were experiencing. So if they are prolonged, talk to your primary care physician, seek out a mental health professional. You can go online too and take, I'm not a big proponent of doing stuff, mental health stuff and mental stuff online, but there are tools out there that you can take anxiety tests and stress tests, but I recommend that that you reach out to a mental health professional. Here's some things related to depression. Now, what happens is if your stress is prolonged and you have chronic stress can lead to anxiety symptoms. Unaddressed anxiety symptoms can lead to full-blown anxiety. And then anxiety, sometimes prolonged and untreated, can lead to depression. And depression is that feeling of sadness and emptiness and fogginess that pervades throughout a day. It's represented by symptoms including a change in appetite. You're either overeating or you're undereating. You've lost your appetite or your appetite has really increased. And of course, as I said before, your appetite generally increases in the way of unhealthy. So you have trouble sleeping, you lose energy, loss of motivation to participate in pleasurable activities, a feeling of worthlessness and guilt. People that struggle with toxic shame will say that during depression that their shame level is off the chart, that the slightest little thing that's said to them triggers them into a feeling of shame and embarrassment. Again, just as before, with stress, you have difficulty thinking and concentrating. Your executive oversight skills become difficult to access because you're so depressed. Your right brain is taking over all of the blood supply, and it is participating continuously in promoting the symptoms of depression. And your left brain, where your executive oversight exists, has kind of gone on sleep mode, and it becomes difficult to kind of pull yourself out of it. That's when you need some help. That's when you want to reach out. And of course, if you don't do something, you eventually will slip into a state of helplessness, which will lead to hopelessness. And hopelessness, unfortunately, leads to suicidal ideations, thoughts, plans, and unfortunately, attempts. And so depression is nothing to be played with. When we see clients, sometimes what we do is if they come in and they have a combination of anxiety and depression symptoms, we first address the depression symptoms because depression is dangerous. Anxiety, not too many people commit suicide because of anxiety. Not too many people do really, really, really crazy things, but because of anxiety. But when we see people with both, we generally go after the depression first, get them mood stable, try to reduce their experience with the depression symptoms. And once we've achieved that, then we start working on the anxiety. Because if we don't work on the anxiety, they will be right back into a depressed state because their depression is being pushed by anxiety. So let me move quickly. So hopefully that was helpful to you. Now, the comprehensive self-care, as I said, many people think that they have self-care, and what they're finding is because of COVID that what they really had was a busy lifestyle full of activities, socializing, and living a very enjoyable lifestyle, being able to do what they wanted to do anytime they wanted to do it, take vacations whenever they want, go wherever restaurant they want to go to, hang out with their friends, and all that's good stuff. But because you're involved in all of that, that doesn't mean you have healthy and comprehensive self-care. And that's what people are finding out is now that all of that has been stripped away from us or limited, they're finding that now they're being overwhelmed by feelings that they were distracted from before because of their involvement in their hectic lifestyles. Some people spend a lot of time at work because they have demanding and stressful jobs. But they then become workaholics. And what happens is they get overly involved in work as a means of self-medicating. That's what a workaholic is, means they are self-medicating through the distractedness of work. If they didn't have work, then they'd have to deal with all the underlying feelings that they don't want to deal with. And they don't want to deal with that because that's frightening. So they'd rather stay at work and deal with the stresses of work. So you can see it creates a sandwich situation where they're creating a no-win for themselves. And so self-monitoring is about paying attention to your body. You should spend at least, I recommend to people that they spend at least 10 minutes to 15 minutes, at least 3 times a week, checking in on their body, their mood, and their behaviors. Where you have a quiet moment, where you have a self-therapy moment, where you sit down and you check, how's my body doing? Don't get to a point where you're so busy that you're ignoring your body. There are aches and pains. Sometimes you're experiencing aches and pains in your bodies and different things going on with your body, and you just keep going. You just keep going. And your body's trying to tell you something. And you just keep going. Oh, let me take some Advil. Let me take some aspirin. Let me go to the store and rub this on it and get some of this. And those are good things if you're monitoring it. But if that doesn't do it, then you need to see your primary care physician, maybe make a change in your diet, get some more physical activity, check with your primary care physician. I hope that you all are having routine physical exams and have a primary care physician that you're comfortable with, that you can call and say, hey, there's something going on with me. My stomach's been bothering me for the last week or so. I thought it was something that I ate, but it's been going on longer than I thought. So can I come in and, check me out, doc, and see what's going on? You should be comfortable with your primary care physician, so much so that you feel like you can call their office and go in no matter what it is, because you are responsible for recognizing what's going on with yourself. Pay attention to your moods, your feelings, and your thoughts. Self-monitor. Sit down with yourself routinely and check, what have I been feeling lately? Name at least 3 feelings that you felt over the last several days. What's been my prominent, dominant feeling over the last? Is it sadness? Is it happiness? Is it gladness? Is it disappointment? Is it irritation? Is it anger? What's been my dominant feeling that I've been experiencing? What feeling can I name? Have I been feeling more lonely and detached and disconnected? Have I been feeling dreary and just disconnected? What am I feeling? The first time that you're describing what you feel should not be with just a mental health professional or a doctor. You should have had a moment with yourself where you're telling yourself, this is what I've been feeling. Self, I've been feeling this. I've been feeling really lonely lately. And I know you say, well, I don't talk to myself like that. Well, think to yourself, talk in your head, but check in with yourself. Look at your behaviors and your interactions. Pay attention to how you've been behaving. Pay attention to how many nights, what's your sleeping habit? What are you watching before you go to sleep? How often, one time I paid attention to it and I found myself in the pantry grabbing some stuff, I don't remember what it was, some chips or something. And I said, you just finished lunch. You can't be hungry. What in the world are you doing? And then as I paused and thought and reflected, I realized, oh, I'm anxious about what I'm about to do. And so I'm eating because I'm anxious as a way of grabbing some pills. Happened to be a handful of pork rinds, but at that moment it was going to be anxiety pills. And so I put the pork rinds back and went and sat down and did some self-meditation and some deep breathing. We do have to pay attention to what we're doing, how we're eating, how we treat people. That's a big one. You can't just keep being moody with people and saying, that's just how I am, and being irritable with people and taking out your mood on people and talking any kind of way with people you want and just saying, well, they got to forgive me. If they real Christians, they should forgive me. That's how I am. I just speak my mind. Yeah, I've heard all of that, but it's damaging to relationships. It's limiting to developing healthy relationships. People won't feel safe with you. And if people can't feel safe with you, they won't form healthy bonds with you. And you need healthy bonds. You need people that you can sit in with a healthy space and just be yourself. One of the things I love to read is the book of Job, and how Job was able to sit down with his friends and just be raggedy and ugly about what he was going through. And he felt safe with his friends to do that with. We all need that experience where we're paying attention to how we treat people. If you having raggedy relationships, no matter in romance, in colleagues, peer associations, the common denominator might be you. And what might be driving your dysfunctional relationship dynamics is your mood, is your unwillingness to pay attention. You got to pay attention to how you treat people. You can't blame everybody for every dysfunctional relationship. It can't always be their fault. Can I say it that way? I wish I was in church and I could ask for an amen. But we're not doing church right now, but it can't always be everybody else's fault. But what I'm saying to is pay attention to how you treat people. You know, one day I'll be transparent. I caught myself. I bumped into something, and it was a piece of furniture in our house. I bumped into it, rushing to do something, and it hurt my leg. And I was so mad, I kicked the thing back, and I had to laugh at myself and cry because I was hurting, and then laugh and said, you know that table can't feel that kick you just did. In fact, if you break that table, your wife's not going to be happy with you. And I had to pay attention to that and say, what in the world are you doing? You can't be hurt without being mad. Where did the anger come in? Where you hurt your leg. What does hurt have to do with anger? Well, hurt triggers anger. If I have a residual of anger already residing within me, and so I had to pay attention to it and say, now, you know, you can't go around beating up furniture. So you need to get back, call your therapist and have a session, sit down with yourself and have a little talk, find out what's going on with you, why you feel like you can punch furniture and kick furniture, and somehow or another that's going to resolve something. What are you really angry about? What are you frustrated about? It can't be that that furniture has been sitting there. That furniture didn't come over and bother you. You bothered the furniture. I had to have that little talk. Y'all stop laughing at me. I'm all right. I took my pills this morning. But sometimes you have to have that talk with yourself in terms of self-recognition. The second part of the comprehensive care, self-care, is self-management, which is regulation. That's where you do things about what you've noticed. Whatever you've noticed about yourself in self-monitoring in the recognition phase, then you adjust your regulation phase. You adjust the self-management. You adjust your diet. You utilize stress management. You use the techniques of even thought replacing, adjusting expectation, relaxing perfection, talking back to your self-critic, moving away and processing anger, doing deep breathing, doing vision with yourself, aromatherapy, doing some grounding. That's where you do your 5 senses, which you can taste, smell, hear, see, and touch. You do grounding. All of these things are involved in helping you to regulate. So whenever you notice in recognition that something's off in my body, my mood, my feelings, my thoughts, my behaviors or interactions, the part of the comprehensive model says in self-regulation, I am required to make an adjustment. Now here's where we lose, the rubber meets the road. Do you have a sufficient menu of things to make adjustments to? If you don't have self-regulation, a model of self-regulation routines and active coping strategies in place, there's nothing to adjust. You can't always jump on a plane and fly off to some tropical place. You can't always just jump and say, I'll go get a massage. I'll go get my hair done. I'll go sit in a park. You can't always do those things. That means you need to develop some in the moment self-regulation things. So that's where you use some of the techniques that I've been talking about. Pay attention to your boundaries. That's an important one. Boundaries not only with people, but boundaries with your schedule. Don't let things keep creeping into your schedule that you really just don't have the time and energy to do. That's a big one. A lot of people are telling me that they used to have a 2 hour commute back and forth to work prior to COVID, and now they're working virtually and they can't find their 2 hours. What does that tell us? That those 2 hours have been absorbed into virtual working. And so what that means is they've lost their boundaries, that work has taken over the house, work has taken over their space. They've lost their boundary, and therefore they need to make an adjustment, reset the boundary. I tell my clients, do not use your bedroom as a workstation. Let your bedroom be the place of rest, of relief. It actually changes your rhythm of sleep, your sleep patterns, if you use your bedroom as a workspace. So I routinely tell my clients, get that workspace, get that virtual workspace out of your bedroom. Move it to some other room that you literally can walk out of and close the door. Um, so that's about boundary setting. I'm rushing because I'm running out of time. I usually end up doing that. And the third phase of comprehensive self-care is maintenance. As I said, regulating your sleep, making your environmental changes, sitting near a window, taking time to look out of a window. If you've got a front yard or a backyard, go walk out in your front yard other than just to cut it or to garden it. Sometimes you stand on your porch just to breathe in some fresh air, make diet changes, reduce your activities, and cut down on unnecessary activities that you participate in. As I said before, learn to say no, reevaluate your priorities, spend time in spiritual and faith-based activities. We all should be connected to something that is greater than ourselves, that transcends ourselves. I'm not going to play pastor here this morning. Of course, I have some preferences for how that should work out, but from a clinical perspective, we all should just have a sense of spirituality and what it is to be connected to something greater than ourselves. So I'm going to stop there. It's exactly 10:02. I have so much more to say, but I want to be faithful and efficient with your time. And so I'm going to stop there. As I said, I am hoping this morning to motivate you to, during this time of COVID, to spend more time paying attention and build a comprehensive model of self-care. So when you come out of COVID, you don't have to just go right back into crazy hectic lifestyle with a lot of pleasurable social stuff thrown in between and call that self-care. That's just your lifestyle. Self-care should be integrated into your lifestyle, but should not be run by your lifestyle. Too many of us have this lifestyle that's dictated to by all kinds of factors: work, family, social engagements, altruistic events. I'm going to say it, even church. Um, Everything is driving us but us. And so I'm hoping today that this at least quickens in your mind. I need to be in charge of me. I need to be responsible for me. I deserve that. I owe that to me. And I should be willing to do this for me, to develop a comprehensive self model. I'll open it up for questions. Um, if there's something that I went over and I covered too quickly and it was really important to you, feel free to request, send me an email, and I'll try to respond to your emails. I can't pull it up right now. I had some technical difficulties earlier this morning. But there is a document that I do provide from time to time. It's a self-care activity list. If you would like a self-care activity list, feel free to write me an email and I'll send it out to you. Again, the only benefit of the list is that you use the things on it to build your own comprehensive self-care model. So I will shut up and I'll go to the chat and see if anybody had any questions. Let's see. Someone asked the question, how do you manage the creep of work into your personal space given the expectations? That's a good question, and I was just running through that. There is an app that you can get. It's called Headspace. I have it on one of my phones. It's called Headspace, big orange circle. It's very popular now. A lot of organizations are offering it free to their employees. Headspace came out with 5 critical factors for making sure that you avoid work creep. And a couple of the things that they identified were, one, make sure, as I said, that your workspace is a separate space in your house, especially if we're talking about a virtual space. It should be a separate space that you can go in and go out of, and that it is not a major part of your house where, where you work is where you sleep, or where you work is where you eat. The other thing they said is take lots of breaks. If you can, make sure that there's a window in that space or nearby that you can take breaks and look out the window. The other thing they mentioned was to make sure that you go through your normal routine in the morning, just like as if you were getting in your car to go to work, that you go through your normal routine, even though you're just walking down the hall to get to your office, that you still owe it to yourself to go through your normal routine, and don't let, because your office is just down the hall, let that invade your normal morning routine. Let's see, any other questions? Feel free, if you don't know how to use the chat function, just unmute yourself and ask me a question if you have it. We've got a few minutes left, and I don't mind answering some questions if I can be of further assistance to someone. Question in the chat line. How do you free yourself from the stigmas of seeking mental health? That's a whole session in itself, but yes, there are a lot of stigmas, especially in the African American community, about seeing mental health professionals. I'm probably as close as some people get to a mental health professional, either seeing me in terms of as a pastor or as a colleague, as a family member or a friend. I don't run around with a sign saying I'm a mental health professional, but I'm very much aware of the stigmas that are associated with mental health. What I am a big advocate of is that life is tough, life is difficult, and you should avail yourself of any support that's available, including a mental health professional. Seeing a mental health professional says that you are taking yourself seriously. The stigma says that it is a sign of weakness. I say to know that you need help and not to seek help is a sign of weakness. And I would encourage you to resist the stigmas and empower yourself with education. Let's see. Accepting certain. I'm trying to read the chat as fast as I can. Yes, someone is asking me, can they get the slides? Yes. If you don't mind, the same email that we've been communicating by, just shoot me an email and request it, and I'll send you the slides. And if you want a list of self-care activities, I can send you that as well. If I send you the slides, I ask that you just keep them to yourself. Don't go sending them around. The ones that you're looking at don't have the watermark in them, but the ones you'll receive will have a watermark in them that say Property of Journey Assistance Counseling. I don't want to miss anything. Okay, looks like I think I've answered all the questions.
No, there's one additional question in the chat.
Okay, I'm trying to. Help me, First Lady.
So it says your thoughts about meeting with like groups to discuss issues and get support.
Say that again.
Your thoughts about meeting with like groups to discuss issues and get support.
Oh, life groups. Woo. Let me say this. Everybody's a mental health professional now. Not everybody's licensed, but there are a lot of podcasts and social media groups, and the churches have their various support groups. Um, I work with, in my private practice, I see a number of people who are coming in with, for lack of a better word, misinformation ranging even as much as being damaged by overexposing themselves in self-help groups. Um, I encourage people to have healthy boundaries, be aware of their boundaries, be smart about what is appropriate material to share in the context of those groups. Because once you've said it, once you've shared it, it's out there and people can use it. Not everybody is equipped to hear what you're really going through. And so, as I said earlier, it's important that you vet people. When I do the portion of healthy relationships, I do a section on boundaries and being vetting people to be in your inner circle, the people that you can really trust, not to judge you, not to try to take advantage of you, not to try to control or influence you because of disclosures that you've made to them of intimate material. So in a short answer, I just caution people to be very careful about what you share. Set up spaces where you are guaranteed safety in terms of sharing intimate information. That's what mental health professionals are for. I'm bound by the state of Maryland. I have a code of ethics that requires me to maintain your confidentiality. So whatever you say, and as a trained professional, I don't judge you for what you tell me, and I get to hear some pretty interesting things. And I'm trained not to judge you, and I can't talk about telling him get out of session and get on the phone and say, oh, you won't believe what Miss So-and-so just told me. Nope, that's what mental health professionals are for. Hopefully that was helpful and responsive. Did I miss anything else? Let's see. Oh, and again, on support groups, if the support groups are being run by mental health professionals and they are a closed group, meaning that once the group starts, that all of those who have signed up for the group, that is the group, they are a known group, they are committed, there's a covenant or an agreement that everybody signs that mimics confidentiality and safety of the group. Those are some things you want to look for. If it's an open group, you really have to be careful because that means people can come in and out as they please. And if you're sharing intimate information, they may come in, hear your stuff, and never come back. And you've just released a piece of your vulnerable, you've been vulnerable in front of somebody that wasn't worthy of your vulnerability. So look for closed groups if you're going to do it, meaning that once there's a deadline for everybody who's going to be in the group, and it's closed for a period of time, and everybody that's going to be in the group signs an agreement. Let's see. If you want to find someone who's licensed, it's public information. You can go to psychologytoday.com. You can put in various criteria and it will help you to find a mental health professional in your area. If you're utilizing church services, then it should be a part of the church's public domain, public information. If the folks that are running particular capacities that have a mental health component, if they are licensed and trained, what you really want to know is that they're licensed and trained to be doing what they're doing. A lot of churches offer mental health capacities now, and most of them have taken the time to separate those from the church and set them up in a separate entity so that they can be meet all the state guidelines for confidentiality and emotional safety, and to follow the HIPAA guidelines. Also, if you want to know if someone's really licensed, just ask them, and look at what initials they have behind their name. Behind my name in the state of Maryland, you'll see LCPC, you'll see LSW in the state of Maryland, LCPC, LG. There's, just look to see what initials they have behind their name, and then you can go to the state of Maryland, stateofmaryland.gov, and they have a tab you can click on, and you can see who's licensed. All the licensed mental health folks are registered in the state of Maryland. There is a tab at the Maryland website that you can go and see their license and see if they're up to date and everything. All right, guys, it's 10:15. I don't want to, as I said, mess up with your time. I know you've got other things to do today. I certainly appreciate you having joined us for this session. I will try to do some additional seminars and offer them through this medium, which allows more people to participate. Thank you all who are writing compliments on the chat board. I really do appreciate the encouragement and the compliments, because I do want to know that this is useful to people, and I do take them to heart, and I certainly appreciate them, and that you trusted me with your time this morning. So with that said, I don't see anything else out on the chat board. I think I got to everything. Again, if I missed you, feel free to write me an email to the same email that you've been communicating with me on. That's my church email, ffchurchpastor@gmail.com.